Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Season 8, Episode 5.
Welcome back, friends. Today we are in Hollywood hanging out with an artist that will hopefully be world-renowned one day. Welcome to the show, contemporary artist and painter Hannah Kline.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm stoked that we got to make this happen. This is the last interview this trip. I did 9 of them over the last handful of days, and I'm glad we saved this one for last. I feel like we have so much in common because, like, I paint. I mean, I'm not like in a bunch of art shows and doing all the things you're doing, but we have that connection. It's kind of dope. So Who are you and what are you passionate about?
I am an artist and also just a person. And I'm passionate about, I would say, being creative in a way that's not just for me, or like, you know, the literal sense of like sitting down and making a painting is obviously really cool. I love doing that. But I think living a creative life in the way where you're creating things for yourself by meeting people that you care about and like to hang out with and doing things that I guess you have to go out of your way to do, and really kind of taking control over living the best life you can is what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to have some kind of sense of purpose, right? And how much purpose can you really have if all you're looking to do is things for yourself? Ideally, when you do things that benefit other people, that makes you also feel really good, right? And that's like kind of helps drive it. And that's one of the beautiful things about art is you can think about all the different pieces of art, whether it's just nature itself or actual physical paintings, and you can remember how much they made you feel. And that's like, oh, wait, I can potentially have that kind of effect on other people. It's pretty motivating, right? To like want to try to go down that path. So you obviously have a lot of stuff out there. So I want people to see it before we get too much into the interview. I want to like tell people where they can go. So how can people best follow you, see the work that you have, potentially reach out and buy it and get in contact with you?
That would be, the best way would be Instagram. My handle is hklineart, and it's not spelled like Calvin Klein. It's Kline. A lot of people think it's HK Line Art, but it's H Kline Art. And my website is also the same spelling.com, so hklineart.com.
Did you design the website and all that stuff too? Or did you hire somebody to do that?
I did design it. Squarespace is really helpful for that. There's a lot of good templates on there. And I also, during quarantine COVID time, I tried to teach myself some coding, and I learned like a very, very, very basic small amount and kind of like entered it in there.
Good old YouTube University taught you how to do it, or where'd you learn?
I learned a little bit on YouTube, and then there's also a really good website / like program called Treehouse that if you're looking into doing any type of coding, I would definitely recommend that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources out there with the internet that I just like. Getting people to know about them is kind of the tough part, right? It's like buying art supplies or anything else. Like a lot of people getting into the space don't really know where to look for any of that type of stuff. And the only thing they find are the first thing that has the most ad dollars paid by Google, which isn't usually like the best way, right? So hopefully people can learn things through this show from other people's experiences of where to go, such as things like that. So where are you from originally, and what was your introduction to art?
I am from Florida, a little bit outside of Orlando. And my first introduction to art that I remember most prominently is in Montessori school, which was the best time ever, like being a kid. And they just have you do like crafts and give you snacks, and there's not that much structure, and there's a lot of creative time.
Was that kind of your whole elementary school era? Is you were doing Montessori stuff?
It was preschool.
Preschool, okay. Because that's still a relatively new thing. When I was growing up, that didn't even exist. And I'm 31, like I'm not that old, but that wasn't a thing. And now it's definitely becoming more prominent, and I think people are seeing a lot of benefits from it. So at preschool, you were being introduced to a bunch of art? Were you doing like a bunch of finger painting and like stuff with popsicle sticks, or like what?
Yeah, it was finger painting, and I remember one we did, it was like I icicle thing, and you had like a, what's it called, pipe cleaner, and put like little beads on it. I remember that one a lot. And there were also a lot of, actually, this is interesting. My first introduction to some of my like favorite painters, they just had those prints everywhere around the class. And I remember, you know, doing the projects there that were very like fun and crafty, but then looking at a Degas painting in there on the wall and being like, I want to learn how to do that. And I think that's when I first recognized how cool painting was.
About how old were you when you recognized that? Because there's no way at 4 you're looking at that and thinking that, right?
I think I was 5. I was 4 or 5.
You're super young then. Okay.
Yeah. It's one of the first memories I have. I don't usually remember a lot of like young age things. But.
Sure. Who were your favorite painters? Who you just said, you'll have to repeat that, but who are your favorite painters when you're growing up? What were the initial inspirations?
I would say a lot of Impressionists were what I really recognized my like the beginning of my kind of painting style in.
Sure.
Because they paint with a lot of color and very kind of painterly. You can see like all the marks on the painting, which I really like. And a good example of that is like Cezanne. Paul Cezanne is really, really, really cool painter. And I think as I sort of started to get more serious about it, then I looked into more of the contemporary people and found a lot of inspiration there.
Sure. What is about Impressionism that you really liked? Was it just like the feel you kind of get from it? Because like I'm not actually that like familiar. Like I paint, right? But my stuff is like cartoony, kind of like whatever, based on things that I like. But I've never really studied or put any thought into it. Like I know who Van Gogh is. Like I've seen stuff of his or whatever. But I actually don't know very many like well-known historical artists, and I don't really know that much about the different kinds of art. I'm always kind of confused when I look at stuff. So what was it about it that like drew you to it? Was just like there like an energy to it, or what was it?
Yeah, there is an energy. It's very dreamy. It's very, I feel like it was kind of a really good introduction into like, you know how there's a lot of surreal sort of artwork out there today. It was a lot like that, but less in content. Like, you know, it's like not like there's spaceships coming in and then like different weird elements put together, but it's like a feeling. It's the way it feels like when you look at it, you're in a dream. It's like crisp in some ways. It looks real, but it's still a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it like focuses specifically on kind of conveying that. You can almost like feel the smells and like the, you know what I mean? When you see like the fields and stuff that people do, it really kind of like puts you in that type of a place. How did your art develop from 5 kind of through the years? A lot of people, you know, it'll be like 6th, 7th grade when all of a sudden they start taking like 2D drawing and they're learning how to draw hands and stuff. But what was your kind of progression through schooling with artwork?
It was, it was around the same age, 6th grade. I was taking art lessons with this camp called Art Workshop. And it was really cool because that teacher would take you through like every different medium. And it was very personalized at the same time as not being too serious. So it was a really, really good intro for me. And I started that, around 6th grade. And then I actually had this neighbor who was this old Southern lady, and she had been painting her whole life and was just the sweetest lady. And we met because I guess my dad had a conversation with her one day and was like, our neighbor is a really good painter. She's been painting her whole life. And you guys should like meet. And so we went over to her house. This was around middle school also. And I just talked to her for a really long time. And we started doing art together in her garage. And she taught me a lot.
Cool.
she taught me a lot of things. And that's when I think I started really feeling like I was away from like the more facilitated kind of like art education.
Yeah, the traditional stuff that you have to do for each individual project or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Were you able to then, she taught you how to use all the different types of paints, like whether it was oils or whatever, like she had all the, materials to be able to use everything?
Yeah.
Yes. I imagine that would be really helpful too, because, painting supplies really aren't that cheap, right? And when you're at that kind of age, like 6th, 7th grade, like you can't really afford to buy a lot of that stuff. I think a lot of kids don't really have that much access to these things in the first place, especially when you look at like different school systems, right? Like some schools are really great about providing that, but it was kind of crazy. This is kind of a small tangent, but the school that my kids used to go to when my older one first went into kindergarten, at the time, they only had a rotating art teacher. They didn't even have one for the school, which like blew my mind, like for the grade anyways, right? So that teacher had to rotate between 3 different grades teaching kindergarten. So they only had art like 2 days a week because they weren't full-time paying for an art teacher. Which in today's world, not having that be a part of curriculum is like mind-blowing to me. And they actually had that for music and for Phi-Ed. So the fact that you at least had like those things around you is like pretty fantastic to be able to like look back on, because a lot of people didn't have those types of things at all. What was the first piece of art that you remember creating, being like pretty stoked on? I'm not saying it has to be something like recent, but like before, I can think of like random drawings I did when I was like 10 that I liked or whatever. What's one that stands out that at the time anyways, you were like, this is kind of sweet?
I have a funny one. I have a funny one from when I was a kid that I'm remembering. It was actually when I think I was like around kindergarten age. And it was sort of an act of defiance, actually, because my mom wouldn't let me watch the second Harry Potter because it was too scary.
Yeah, with the spiders and the snake, yeah.
Yeah. And so I tried like a few times. I like kind of poked at her to see if she would let me watch it. And then eventually her and my sister just like locked me out of the room. It was so intense. They were watching the movie in like our movie room and they locked the door so I couldn't get in. And then I was feeling pretty upset about it. So I found the like outside of the box, and then I took a piece of paper and I like drew the movie, and like totally placebo convinced myself that I now was in possession of the actual movie. And I was like, in your face, like, look at this. I have the movie. And I think that's something I remember having like a passionate feeling about, that I drew myself, and it's like putting something into reality.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to be doing it at that young of an age. I think it just set the precedent, right, for the rest of your life at that point. And I'm glad are you still a Harry Potter fan?
I am.
Because I'm like a massive Harry Potter fan. Like I've been to Harry Potter World in Florida 3 times, I think. I went to Harry Potter World in Japan, over in Osaka, and then I went to Edinburgh where she wrote it, and like went and saw the cafe and the graveyard, and then I went to Studio Tour London and saw everything there too. Yeah, huge fan. Like anyone that wants to challenge me at trivia, it's a completely useless thing, but I'm very good at both skateboarding trivia and Harry Potter trivia, and like that's about it. So moving up then through schooling, at what point did you, because you went to art school eventually, right?
Yes.
Okay.
For like college?
Yeah. So at what point during like say middle school, high school, did you kind of like realize you wanted to try to make this a career? Like you wanted to go that route of going to school eventually, secondary school for it and all that?
I think it actually wasn't even until college. I knew that I loved it, but I think it definitely took me a while to feel comfortable with the idea of studying it at school, because it's pretty discouraged. Like I feel like in a lot of places, especially where I grew up, because there's like not too much of a huge understanding of art, and like basically not of art, but like the way it can become a career.
Absolutely. I mean, I own a skateboard shop, so I'm right there with you. Trying to tell people I want to open a skateboard shop was like that's not a job, dude. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it can be a job. It can be if you just like open your eyes to it. Not only that, but going to college is a big investment. It's expensive, right? So to actually pull the trigger and say, I'm willing to invest like serious time and money into trying to pursue this as a career, it's like a pretty big decision to kind of make. Did you go to school with it being just kind of like, I'll take liberal arts classes or whatever, and then it transitioned into that? Or when you went into college, was it very intentional, like, okay, art school?
I did something called exploratory for the first year, or the first semester actually, of college. And I had gone in actually thinking I was going to pursue law, and I was thinking about environmental law. And then I got there and thought it would be a good idea to like sit on it and do the exploratory first. And then I kind of realized that all of the things that I was doing outside of the classes, which were very, generic, general ed, had to do with art or creativity. And I was like, well, this is probably what I should actually be doing.
Yeah.
It makes a lot more sense and I love it. And I talked with my parents about it, and because I had put thought into it, I think they warmed up to the idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to be able to have some kind of support in that way. I didn't really have that so much with mine. I worked my way up, and I always got good grades in school, right? Like pretty decent, 3.5 or whatever, without really trying. My skill sets reside specifically in what we're doing right here. I was always pretty good with people, but I don't have a huge attention span for things like writing a paper. Like I just don't enjoy that form of communication in any kind of way. It just wasn't really my cup of tea. I went to college up in Duluth, Minnesota for business, and I made the dean's list and stuff. Like I did well, got an A in calculus and all that, but it was just kind of like I really felt like it was wasting my time. I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I dropped out right away then to just work my way up through sales jobs, because I was already doing sales things. And it clicked with me, like how much money you make a company is how you get promoted. The degree's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So, and I knew I either wanted to run a store or I wanted to own my own. So I worked my way up doing the little ladder climbing, whatever. Worked for K Jewelers for a while, Hellsberg Diamonds I was the assistant manager of. And then I got an assistant management position with Verizon Wireless, which is notorious for overpaying and being a horrible company. I'll call them out. They're awful. But I worked for them. It was the easiest job ever. And I was making pretty good money, pretty young. When then I decided, like, I hate what I do. I want to finally do what I actually want to do. And then I was like, okay, so I'm going to open this skateboard shop. And I got resistance from like my family, because they were all like, you're making more than either of us did, and you don't have a college degree. You're really lucky to be in the position you are. Why would you walk away from that? And I had to try to like give them that conversation, say, well, number one, I wasn't lucky. I earned that.
Yeah.
Which means if I wanted to go back to it, I could go get it again, because I have the numbers behind me. They will hire me back if I want to, because I was the best salesperson for them in this area or whatever, right? So it's like, it's not as big of a risk as you think it is. But to try to convince them that like, the money isn't what I care about though. Like I want to do something I really care about for a living.
Yeah.
That was hard. And I think just because, our parents and in general generations before, entrepreneurship, artists, like those careers weren't nearly as accessible as they are today with the day and age of the internet and the tools and stuff that we have. It's a lot more possible to do it, So for them, I think it's more like a pipe dream. For us, we grew up seeing people on Instagram and everywhere else like doing it. So it seems like possible. But the fact that they believed that this was something you could do, even after you had to prove it a little bit, I'm sure that was super helpful, at least like giving you that drive and that motivation to continue on with schooling at that point, right?
Yeah, totally. It's also, that's awesome that you were able to, it's like, I actually was talking to a friend about this the other day. I feel like it's more of an accomplishment in a way, even though a lot of people wouldn't think of it this way. It's more of an accomplishment to leave something that you don't like and recognize, because it opens up so much imagination for your future. And like, I feel like once you make that first step, you manifest a lot of things. But sorry, I got
I completely agree. That's what I always try to tell people all the time. And with the show, that's really the goal, is to get people to be inspired to take the first step, because people put this dream of theirs as this like mountain way off in the distance that's just like not possible to reach, right? They think it's so far away, when it's like actually a lot more reasonable. Once you take those first couple steps, you're like, wait a second, this path isn't as like hard as I made it out to be. Don't get me wrong, it's difficult, but it's like much more doable, much more feasible than I think people really think in the vast majority of these things. Because to be an artist, you don't have to be extremely famous and wealthy, right? You just want to be able to create and make enough money to be able to live doing that. That is actually pretty possible. Now, if it continues beyond that and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and hundreds of thousands of people look at your art, that's fantastic, but you don't necessarily have to reach that point. And I think people think of it that way, where it's like it has to reach that for it to be a success. And like, that's really not true. I want to ask about art shows, because I actually just was in my first art show, which is kind of crazy, and I never celebrated it. I was just talking to Jake off mic about that earlier.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had these goals for a while with my art, because I started painting a few years ago, not when I was 5, but more recently I started painting, and I had these goals in my mind that I really wanted to paint a mural in my town, and I really wanted to be asked by somebody else to be in an art show, because I'd thrown my own at my own store and stuff. And then I got the phone call for both from the same person. And I showed you that one that I did on the side of that one brick wall. So I did that, and I got asked to be in an art show. So I had a bunch of my stuff up in this coffee shop, and I was like,
hell yeah,
so stoked about it. Cause then we had an art talk there, and I actually sold art at the art talk, and people are asking me about it as if I'm like a real artist. And I'm like, wait a second, maybe I am a real artist. This is pretty tight. What was the first art show you were ever a part of?
That's a good question. I think it would have probably had to have been like a school art show. High school, there was an art show at the AAA Center. And that was the first official art show. But more kind of outside of school, there was an online art show actually that cool. I was in during COVID.
Yeah, I was in one too, actually. Now that you say that, I was in a little virtual one. I had a sculpture of mine up.
Hell yeah.
But
that's
anyway,
awesome.
What were the pieces that you had up? Can you recall what they look like, or why you had them in there? Were they selected by somebody else from your stuff, or did you specifically submit them?
For the online?
Sure.
Yeah. I had submitted them, and then it was actually kind of funny because they sent me the acceptance, and they were like, your stuff was accepted, resend it. And then I tried to look to see what I had sent, and I just completely forgot, and there was no record of it. So I just put some whatever I was feeling at the time, and it was cool. I did some from a recent series that I finished called This Must Be the Place, and it's about the possibility of alien ocean creatures.
I'm a scuba diver, so I love this topic. Continue.
Okay, cool. I'm working on getting my scuba diving license soon, but I just need to actually do it.
It really is like being an astronaut. You go to a completely different world down there.
Yeah, that's what I read. This book called Alien Oceans, and it was interesting because the introductory chapter was written by this guy who went in a submersible down to the bottom, the deepest part of the ocean.
Whoa.
For research for a James Cameron movie.
Wow.
Which is also kind of a crazy thing because it was funded by another creative project. And he was saying on the way down, the bioluminescent creatures look like space. And that was a really cool thing to envision, even just through the words.
And that's what the artwork that's what you painted afterwards was based off of those things?
Yeah.
Cool. Now I'm really excited to be able to find those. Where can I find them?
They are on my website.
Oh, okay. Perfect. By the way, really random here, but awesome. We just switched station managers on the radio station that this airs on, which is Converge Radio back home, which is such a cool thing. It's all ran by volunteers. It's just us cool local people that want to be able to bring local music and conversations and stuff. And the new station manager, Colin Ryan, has a weekly radio show on my station called This Must Be the Place.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's
just
awesome.
was hanging out with them last week, kind of talking about the direction of things. Anyway, so small world on that. What was the first piece of art that you remember selling?
The first piece of art that I sold was actually for my bat mitzvah. You have to do a mitzvah project. And
cool.
So my mitzvah project was I would paint people's pets, mostly dogs, some birds, some interesting animals in there. And I sold those and then donated the proceeds to St. Jude's.
Oh, cool.
And it was fun. It was my first time. I think actually, I mean, that mitzvah project was really cool in itself because it was for a good cause.
Right.
And I got to do art for it, something that I love. But it also kind of opened my eyes to the fact that I can sell things. I just never it wasn't until then that I put that effort into doing that.
Yeah, that's the crazy part when that happens for the first time. So I was going through a divorce basically, and I was painting these like silly little monsters because I was just really depressed. And I was like painting them because I'm like, these things are like kind of dumb and like make me smile because they're just not, I don't know, like so out there. And after a while, eventually people were like friends of mine, were like, well, can I have one? And I'm like, yeah, I got like 10 of them. Here you go. And then eventually enough people asked where I was like, no, I actually don't have any extra. And they're like, well, how much then? And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool, And then when I got hired to do that mural, the one downtown, that was mostly like volunteer, I would say, because the dollar amount was like pretty small considering how many hours went into it. However, after that, then I got hired to do like a full mural where it was like, okay, this is how much it is per hour. And I undersold myself even, which was cool. Like he paid me more than I thought I deserved anyways. And I had done the hours and I told him, afterwards, I was like, man, this was more than I thought it was going to be. Like it took longer. Are you comfortable with this price? And he was like, sure. And then he went and got cash and paid me an extra 100 on top of it. Cause he's like, no, you're worth more than that. And that was like,
that's
no
awesome.
way. Like that's so sick, So like that made me feel really good. If you had to try to like paint a picture for somebody, I mean, obviously like artists usually have a lot of different things they do, but typically there's some kind of styling that people can recognize or whatever. If you had to pick a painting of yours, just like pick anyone, could be from any project. Can you try to paint it like verbally so that way we can like imagine what your artwork looks like in our minds?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It could be like a specific painting or just in general.
Well, either or. I think if you pick a specific painting, maybe that's easier to picture, but it's up to you.
Cool. There's one I did. It's actually a very, very large sort of thing that I worked on over a year, my last year in college. And I feel like it was a very definitive moment of where I was going and what my style is because it's very mushy.
Okay.
And very chaotic. There's like a lot going on. There's a lot of images and textures like fabrics and things collaged in there and kind of just like accumulating, which is why I think the coolest part and why I was able to create that visual effect was because it happened for so long. And that was the longest I'd spent on any project, but
that was like a year.
Wow.
Okay.
And it is very colorful, very mushy, lots of texture, some random figures and images in there. I also during that time was very into drawing film stills from shows I liked or movies I liked where it was kind of like a pause and you like see two people in this gesture and you're like, what's happening? I really liked this sort of like curiosity of like those sorts of recognizable, because they're on TV and Americans love TV, those recognizable moments between characters or when they're like in an interesting place. Basically just film stills that interested me. I would sprinkle those in there and yeah. I feel like that's the best way to sum it up. It's a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can just go and look at I shouldn't say all. I'm sure there's art that's not up there because I'm sure you've created a ton, but you can go and take a look at it. I think it's interesting because people take so many different approaches to the way they do art, right? Like I've seen people where they sketch out everything ahead of time and it's like already done and then they start over again, And I see other people where it's like in order to paint, they have to have a canvas. It was like the only way that they do it, versus like myself, I like to paint on photographs a lot, which is like kind of random. My favorite artist, Lucas Buford, he's a French artist. And like he'll paint these kind of like what captured me anyways. I was in was in Tokyo somewhere, Shibuya maybe, I don't remember, but I went to the skateboard shop in Tokyo, and there's this big like stand outside of it, and it was like looked like a magazine cover, right, like of a skateboard trick, but it had this like character painted on it, and I was like, what is this? I love it. I don't know what it is, but I really love it. And I found out it was this artist Lucas Buford, and he does a lot of other things as well, but he'll do that where like this character is like interacting with this photograph, and I like painting characters, but I don't like painting backgrounds. Like I never know what to do with it. I just like painting characters. And so I end up kind of like going down that route with a lot of them, which is like, I don't know, created a different conversation. So now I try to take photos. The problem is I need a better camera because half the time I'm trying to take photos with like my iPhone, and that means you can only blow it up to be so big before, you know what I mean, before you print it, or it's going to be totally ruined. So what made you, like after art school, obviously you must have finished art school before you came here. What made you decide like you had to move here to be able to pursue your career?
That's a good question. I still feel like there wasn't anything super linear or planned out when I came here. I wasn't thinking about like grad school in California or anything like that, or any specific sorts of like galleries or anything like that. But I had visited here, and I interned here a few summers ago doing something completely not art related, but I just liked how much of a spectrum there is here of different types of creativity, and also just different types of neighborhoods. And I feel like there's a lot of unique pathways here, and I could see myself fitting in that because I wasn't so certain on like exactly how I would become an artist, even though, you know, I am already an artist, but like, become established, I guess.
Well, LA is like its own country. It literally has the population of some countries, you know what I mean? And there's so much diversity within everything, and it is a massive creative hub. So yeah, if you change your complete style of art to something different, there would still be a home for that here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
totally.
there really is like limitless potential. The only problem is that it's incredibly expensive, which brings me to my next question. How have you been able to manage to do this? Like, do you have a bunch of side gigs and stuff that you're doing, like side hustles? Are you like doing art full time? How have you been able to make that transition into coming out here? Because it really is crazy expensive to be here.
It is. That's actually something I'm still very much figuring out. I feel like right now I'm at the tail end of a situation a little bit similar to yours, with the 9-to-5 that pays well, but it's like easy in some ways. But it takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, it's not what you want to be spending your time doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm basically, since I've been here, I started out in a teaching job, which was actually really cool, really fun. But as great as it was, I was like, I'm not built for this.
Sure.
And then I ended up doing reception. And from there, I worked my way into more sort of creative positions to see what that would be like. But I've been doing some graphic design, and that's been cool. But basically right now I'm kind of in this place where I'm down to keep doing it. But I would like to figure out a way to do it part-time. So, and that's already kind of coming into fruition because I've been freelancing a lot. And basically trying to see how many options I have to make money while being creative, even if it's not necessarily my art or that sort of thing. But it's basically just the flexibility that I've been focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be a realist, like you kind of have to do that for quite a while, actually. You know, I tell people like growing up, I wanted to be a pro skateboarder, right? Like every little kid did, playing Tony Hawk video games and stuff. I'm not that good at skateboarding. Like I'm not horrible, but like not even in the conversation of possibility that was going to happen, right? Okay, but that's not the only way to have skateboarding be your life. I opened a skateboard shop. I'm just as much in the skateboard industry as a pro skateboarder would be, except I get to go home every day. It's actually the preferable career, in my opinion, for myself anyways. And if you can recognize, like, there's a lot of ways to get involved in that if you're willing to open your mind to like different possibilities, there's a lot of ways that you can get involved, and especially those just being like your foot in the door. And then you still have the potential because you're putting your energy in the right places for it to grow in any kind of direction and maybe be at a point where you have complete creative freedom and every painting that you sell is 10 grand and you know what I mean? Like, it could definitely get to that point once you start being able to put the time and energy into that. And in any kind of creative world, I call all artists entrepreneurs, because you really are. In any kind of realm like that, work comes and goes. Money will come and go. It's not a consistent thing, which is one of the hardest things for people to deal with. That's why a lot of us have multiple streams of income. Like, you kind of have to. Like, I get money through my show. I get money through my art. I get money through my apparel. I get money through my website. I get money through my shop. Not that much money from any of them, but collectively, I can make a living then, right? So that's like, it's kind of the norm, and that's one of the things that, like, referring to what I was talking about with our parents before, that wasn't a thing. It was just you picked one thing and that's how you made a living. Nowadays, it doesn't have to be that way. Right. I mean, if you need more money one random month, you can just drive Uber. Like, it's you can find ways to make it work. True. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as your art, what projects have popped up since you've been here? Anything really cool?
Yes. Yeah. So right now I am working on book illustration.
Cool.
And
are you doing that digitally, or are you doing it like a physical painting and then scanning it to be able to put it in?
I'm doing it basically like mostly sketching, and then I'll put it in Illustrator and kind of like play around with it to see what I can do digitally. And that's been cool. That's about like a third of the way there. I'm also doing my own stuff. I've been like very, very regular about that. That series, This Must Be the Place, came out. And I've been working with a few musicians doing kind of like album art stuff, as well as some like visual creative direction for music videos. And that's actually been really fun, because I haven't ever blended like the art form of film before with like very traditional visual art.
Yeah.
So that's been an experience, and I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, when you have an eye for art, it really does kind of like go around everywhere, if you're willing to do that. I mean, for real, you could make fabrics that end up being used on leather jackets and stuff that are cool, right? It's like, there's so much freedom in that space. Now, being able to actually make money doing any of those cool projects is like the hard part. But still, being able to like kind of experiment with that, all it does is improve your skill set and your ability within your own art, right? Because it gives you more options. You're like, well, I've done this before. I wonder how I could play with that. It's like when you look at multimedia projects in general, how you're saying that other painting, you had fabrics and stuff. It's like the more you can play with things digital, how I'm using photographs and some stuff because of, that other artist I mentioned, or if you're using fabrics or whatever, it's like you learn all these different skills. All it does is really open up the possibilities of what you can create in the first place, which is kind of exciting because there's really limitless potential there. Before, if you look 100 years ago, there were only so many materials that were possible to be used. Yeah. Now with the technology and everything else that's there, it's like there's so much more potential there. There's so many more artists, like musicians and stuff, that need album artwork. Half of these people need artwork just for their one, song cover. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of opportunity to create. Like I said, the hard part is making enough money off of that to like make a living, but the opportunities are there. And as those opportunities pop up, if you can take advantage of them and people are really enjoying your stuff, money will follow. Your schedule will get busy and people will hit you up and say, hey, I have this project. And you say, well, I'm already getting paid for this one. Now all of a sudden you have a rate, and that rate will only go up and only go up and only go up, which is the beautiful part about doing art is like once you pay your dues, may take a long time, you will eventually get to a really comfortable place. So hopefully it's not that far off. So over time, as you've done all these projects, you learn things how to use Illustrator, you learn how to use different materials or whatever. What are some of the things that you've learned over the years that have helped you develop the most as far as your art and career goes?
I would say patience, in so many aspects. Like patience has helped me, and just making quality art because good things take time, whether it's like the actual time you spend working on one painting or one thing, or the amount of time it takes for you to genuinely have an idea come to you and make it happen. I feel like patience is a huge part of that. And being present is a big part of that too. Because if you're always focusing on what to do next, I feel like art is largely like ideas coming to you when you're open to them.
Yeah.
And it's like very much not about the ego in that way, because it's kind of like that idea is the art and you're just the one executing it.
Sure.
So that's a valuable lesson I've learned. And patience, going back to patience, is a really important thing when you're deciding what opportunities to take, or when you're looking for opportunities, because sometimes things they might sound good, but if you don't do the research properly, it might not actually be the best thing for you. And that's something I've definitely learned from experience. And also on the other side, if you wait for the right opportunities and are patient about it, you're likely to get something that actually will be good for you.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people this all the time, that the most successful people are the people that recognize the right opportunities when they pop up and pounce on them. Because if you're good at what you do, everybody wants a piece. So people will present you with opportunities all the time. And some of these people are very good salespeople, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is the right opportunity. It's the people it's when you recognize when the right opportunity is there. And if it is the right one, a lot of times that door or that window is like a pretty small one, right? So it's like when that opportunity arises, you got to actually jump on that. Early on in the career, sometimes you have to kind of take, what's thrown at you rather than like be as choosy as you want to be. But really those decisions, as far as like when something pops up, which opportunities are the right ones, that's really what makes or breaks your career. You know what I mean? Otherwise you'll be wasting your time on all kinds of random little things. You need to be able to value yourself and say, okay, well, what really is going to help me get to my goals? Right. This opportunity, whether it's a financial thing or whether it's an experience thing or whatever, recognizing those opportunities, I think, are super important.
Yeah.
You mentioned on a different show that you like doing collaborations. I don't know that many artists that like to do that because you like relinquish so much control with your art. What's a collaboration that you did? Who was it with? How was that experience? Like, what'd you like about it?
It's a good question. I got to think about that one. I did a collaboration with a friend of mine named Jessie, who's an insane photographer. She's very, very talented and very hardworking. It's a combo. But we did a photo shoot together where I used one of my pieces as like a backdrop.
Yeah.
And then got some of my friends to be my models, which was also super fun. Cool. And found like a bunch of weird, like funky clothes from the thrift store. And we threw together just like a day to do a photo shoot. And that ended up being really cool and just like really fun in the moment. I also love bringing in that many people and like making it an experience, like just like a fun hangout instead of like so serious all the time.
Yeah.
And it actually ended up being like something that people have revisited and like told me that they like it or that it inspired them to like do a similar thing with their photo shoots or with like set design or something like that.
Sure.
So it's cool to see something I made that was really fun to make also extend out and like inspire people.
Yeah, having an effect on people, again, that's like a big reason why people create in the first place, is because they remember how other people's creations, whether it's art or music, whatever, how it made them feel. And it's like, okay, I want to make other people have these types of feelings, right? Like that's how I feel with mine. When I painted that mural that I showed you, that monster, I very much had, like, I intentionally painted it with him kind of like looking down and sticking his tongue out, so that way people would want to pose with it because it's fun. Like that was kind of the point. So being able to have that be a part of it, I think is super important. If you had a dream collaboration, who would it be with? You pick any artist, whether it's like a musician or a photographer or another painter that you could do something with, anybody at all.
I would say Cecily Brown is she does huge paint. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Not familiar, no. Yeah.
She does huge paintings and they're figure paintings, but they're very like loose. And they're I don't know, they're just monumental. I think if I ever could meet her, which would be awesome, and collaborate with her, that would be like really cool, honestly, just to see her process and do something that big and like have that many. I don't know, like her stuff is awesome. I would definitely recommend looking at her stuff.
No, I'm definitely going to. Are there any like big checklist items that you want to hit left? I'm sure there are some, right? Like with me, where I mentioned earlier, where I was like, on the checklist very much was I wanted to be asked to be in an art show, and I really wanted to paint a mural downtown in my city. Those were two big things on my checklist that I thankfully got to mark off recently. What are the other like goals and stuff that you have that you're trying to check off?
I think doing more collaborations with people in different art forms. It'd be really cool to make a checklist of every art form, like dance, music, film. Trying to think. There's so many art forms. I'm sure I could think of a lot more if I could right now. But
sure.
I think it'd be really cool to put that on a checklist and try to achieve it, especially in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well, there's limitless potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is. And definitely doing a residency. This is kind of a more like milestone-y one, but I would really love to do an art residency because there's really great programming at those a lot of times, and you get to kind of like do these workshops with people who know what they're talking about.
Sure.
And have a career in art. And also it's kind of like art camp. Like
sure.
You get to be part of a community and retreat away for a little bit.
Yeah, that would be really rad. Have you had your stuff up in art shows that stay like continuously for a while, where you have like your own like little exhibit? Have you ever done that before?
I've been wanting to do an art show at my house for a while.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because then you can really like curate the whole experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be dope. We did a small art show at my shop a while back, and I had one of my friends sing at it. She's a singer, so her and her brother came and played like acoustically and like played music and stuff while we had it, and it was a whole little experience in my town, which was really, really dope. Being able to throw more events and stuff like that is definitely something I want in my future. Speaking of futures, I know you have some other projects coming up. What are the things that we can expect to see from you like moving forward? I'm sure you have some things in the works, right?
Yes, I do. So in the future, there will be a music video for a very good friend of mine, and we're all getting together and making a bunch of art for it and like fun costumes and stuff. But my role is making the backdrop. So that's what I'll be doing in the future. And I'm kind of in between painting series right now, but I have some ideas. And that will probably, I guess, I don't know exactly when that will take hold. It depends on a lot of things, but I definitely want to do something larger scale. I want to do more collaging, get back into that, because I've been like very traditional sort of painting lately.
Sure.
And that's all I can think of right now.
Sure. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot, so I'll have to pay attention. It's to that point of the show. I told you about these questions ahead of time because I love them. They're like my favorite thing because the reason people pursue things that they're passionate about are because they have really awesome experiences that are very fulfilling. You know what I mean? It's not like a random extra bonus paycheck or whatever. So can you share a story of a unique experience that you're really grateful for, but it only happened because you chose to pursue your passion for art?
Yes, I can. My favorite experience, I don't know how unique it is, but it's unique to me. But I've been to like a lot of camps in my life, and I ended up going to this art camp. That was by far like the place where I met lifelong friends and just had the best time ever. And that's coming from a Florida Jewish girl who's been to a lot of camps. Like this is something about being around that many creative people, I think, is because I knew that I wanted to be creative and go to an art camp and had heard about this place. I think that to me was a unique experience because so much came from it.
Sure.
Like a lot of friendships and a lot of really good memories.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think about that just in the way of coming out here on trips. You know, this whole last week of all the cool people I've gotten to meet and all these conversations I've had, and then going out and seeing people out and about. It's just kind of like wow, why am I this random dude from Wisconsin out here in Hollywood? Like, this is so sick. You know what I mean? It's like, it really is a cool experience. So speaking of other experiences, I also asked you to think about one of these. I think we learn the quickest through mistakes. Unfortunately, you have to kind of learn the hard way. That's the best way to become a well-rounded person and build more skills so that way you don't make those mistakes in the future. Can you share a unique story about a mistake that you made that taught you something valuable that somebody listening might be able to benefit from?
Yes. This one's actually a pretty funny one, looking back on it. But I was looking for a very specific thing, and that's probably where the mistake first started happening. But I wanted to do an art residency in Asheville, North Carolina, because I have family there, and I had been like a fan of the art scene there. There's a lot of really cool art in Asheville, and so I was like, that's what I'm gonna do this summer. And I found one, and it ended up being very it wasn't a scam, but it definitely was not what didn't provide very much for me, because it was a residency that had just started, and a lot of the things that the person running it, I think he had really good intentions, but a lot of the things that he was telling me were going to be there, he just hadn't, by the time I got there, he hadn't actually made it happen.
Sure.
And which happens. It was like, it was a mistake, I think, that...
You had big visions and overpromised.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting summer. It was like I had a studio in a dark corner that I never wanted to go into because it was very tiny and there was no good lighting. I tried to like hang some lamps around, but there was also like no outlet. It was
Sure.
An interesting time.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I like to tell people that you just have to go with the flow in certain things, you know, as badly as you want something, if you're thinking about it too specifically and trying to make it happen in like just too specifically, a lot of times it's just not what's working, you know, at least not that day, you know, especially with art or something, right? You can be working on a painting and I know you really want to finish this one today. If it's just not working that day, you can't really force it. It's just not going to work. You know, you got to move on to something else, you know, or like if I'm too fixated on trying to interview a very specific person, like it's not going to work. I'm going to be trying way too hard for that when there's plenty of other cool people I could be interviewing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you're willing to allow yourself to kind of flow as long as it's still in the right direction, things are going to work so much easier for you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been fantastic. Once again, where can people go, find you, follow you, see your work, buy something from you, and how can they support you moving forward?
My Instagram is a great place to DM me or just like look at what I've been up to. Kline Art, HKLINE Art. Don't want anyone misspelling my last name because it happens so much. And my website, Kline Art, is somewhere where you can kind of see a more cohesive, organized view of what I've done. There's also a lot of like explanations of what each series means and what I was focusing on. And I also am trying to use TikTok more nowadays. And that's also Kline Art. So everything is called Kline Art. HKlineart.com for the website. And yeah, I think that's all.
What approximately, if you don't mind, and if you don't want to say it's totally cool, but what's the general price range if somebody wanted to reach out to you to like try to purchase something?
It depends on the size.
Right.
I charge about $2 per square inch.
Oh, okay.
If that helps anybody, you got to do some math. But my smaller stuff ranges usually from 150 to like 500.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bigger stuff is usually going to be in the thousands, just because I do tend to go pretty big.
Sure.
And with paint on canvas, it's more time consuming, lots of materials.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that knows anything about art understands that, right? Like if it would be no question to pay somebody $20 an hour for like a lot of jobs. So then if you just tell people like, dude, this took 20 hours, like how do you, I got to get paid, right? Like I think most people who are familiar with purchasing any kind of art like totally understand that. But I just want to ask so that way people have a general idea of kind of where that pricing is, because I rarely sell paintings for less than like $100 either, just because I'm usually 10 hours into anything and like I got to make some money, and I'm not even trying to do art full time. You know what I mean? Hopefully I can get to a point where people want to pay more than that. But anyways, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so awesome.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.